Good Saturday afternoon. It's a beautiful morning. And we're using our soap. Man, old school stuff. Even the young people like it. It's a beautiful morning. Hey, it's good to be with you. I haven't done a video in a while, though I have been publishing all my soaps on our webpage. They are there. And by the way, we have a guest person who's a writer for soap, and that is Neil Robinson. And so he's submitting. Neil's a great writer, and I love his thoughts, and he just submitted one. And so take advantage of it. Let's do some learning community. Today, I'm doing Saturday, March 9th. It's a beautiful morning. And we are on day 65 of this one that I'm doing. I'm actually moving right along. And I've entitled this one, The Greatest of the Commandments Deals with the Motive of the Heart. And what I ended up doing was Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 6. The 10 Commandments are given, and this verse just popped out at me. Of course, we see in the New Testament, Jesus refers back to this. Look what he says. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Deuteronomy 4 through 6. And here's my observation. God, through his servant Moses, just gave the 10 Commandments. And in his commandment, God specifically is now demanding that if Israel loves God, that there has to be a demand for actions to live it out. These words in Deuteronomy 6:4 have a unique significance in Deuteronomy as they begin the essence of the instruction God gives Moses. They are well known as the summary of the teachings of Moses and are now among some of the oldest confessions preserved from antiquity. A document that is known as the Nash Papyrus Scrolls, 100 BC, was discovered in Egypt in 1902, which has these declarations. A scholar that I follow, August H. Konicki, he works with the English Standard Version. He's done some of their commentary writing. He's a really good writer. When discussing the pericope or the logical order of this passage, he writes this: Deuteronomy is the first book in the Bible to demand love for God. Previously, the emphasis was on the fear of God, an awe of his grandeur, and a dread of his judgment that serve as motives in obedience. That's Deuteronomy 4:10. Deuteronomy demands both love and fear as the motivation for keeping covenant. Heart, soul, and might are ways of describing every aspect of personal commitment. The heart comes from the Hebrew word labab, which is the center of thought and attention. Most often, it's the equivalent to the mind. God tested Israel to know what was on their mind and to determine whether they would obey. And that's Deuteronomy 8:2. Thus, the people must know in their mind that God is disciplining them as a person corrects a child in Deuteronomy 8:5. The word nephesh is soul. It's not exclusive to humans. God created every creature that moves on the ground or in the air with breath. That's nephesh. That's Genesis chapter 1, verse 21. And in reference to humans, this term expresses desire. Just as a side note, evangelicals struggle with the notion that God created nephesh in all creation because they confuse this thought as animals having the ability to be self-aware or to exercise a moral imagination. And that's not what it means. It just means that they have been given life, which was only, but because a moral imagination and being self-aware is only what people, human beings, can have. Once in the promised land, the nephesh of Israel would crave meat, and the people would eat meat according to the cravings of their nephesh. Now, here comes the word strength, which comes from the Hebrew word miad, which is found as a noun only in this verse and at 2 Kings 23:25. The only other place in which these words are used to express complete devotion to the covenant, if it includes all the resources of a person's life. Since Yahweh is the one, he alone can be God of Israel. His people in turn must love him as one that is they got to be undivided in their thought and in their desire to serve God. Therefore, to keep covenant requires that it finds its motivation from the heart, and to do anything less is not to respond out of love, but instead obligation. Here's my application. Another way that I feel the Holy Spirit is reminding me that discipleship can take place is through the head, the heart, and the hands. It is with our total being that our obedience flows out of our love of God that demands that we live this out. Everything in me must come into an alignment with God's will. God was informing Israel that it was no longer about their attempt to define what was right or wrong, but rather what was the will of God. It's always been that way. Some attempted to be successful rebels to God's commandments, and they were judged. And when speaking of God's correction and judgments of rebellious people, C.S. Lewis once wrote this: there are only two kinds of people in the end: those who say to God, thy will be done, and those whom God says in the end, thy will be done. Yeah, that's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? May I always keep at the forefront that it's God's will that I must surrender to in order to have my full love and devotion to the Father. And here's my prayer today. Oh Lord, may I daily consecrate myself to love you, not just with my lips, but with my action. Please forgive me for my failure to do this well at times. I'm asking your Holy Spirit to empower me fully to do this well. I love you, Lord, and I'm grateful for your grace. And that is the conclusion of today's soap. I love you. Keep up the soap. If you're behind, just start today where you're at. Let's do this. Matter of fact, as much as you've done so far this year, you've probably done more than you did last year. We're on this journey together. We're in the Word. We're journaling. And boy, I can't wait to see all the things that God is doing, because we're already seeing that come to the surface. I sure love you, New Hope Fellowship. And give me your feedback and your response in the comments with this. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.